Secretary Rubio, one of the many things that President Trump said during his campaign run was that he would end the war in Ukraine on day one. That did not happen. How do you reconcile with the fact that he made a lot of promises and now it might be up to you and the team to keep these promises?
Yeah. At the time of recording this video, Donald Trump has been in office for more than 26 hours, and already he has officially broken one of his biggest campaign promises, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, the Trump administration is already starting off with a series of abject failures. And again, the promise that Trump broke isn't a minor promise, wasn't a fringe promise. It was one of the biggest and most consistent promises he made to his voters and the American people. And if you don't believe me, just hear him.
Could end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours.
Yes, I
How
could.
would you do that?
I know Zelensky very well.
I'll end that war between those two countries in 24 hours. It won't even take that long. I will get the war ended. I'll stop all of those lives from being wasted and lost. And there'll be no more bombing of Ukraine. There'll be no more bombing of Russia. And everybody will be happy.
It can be negotiated, I think, within 24 hours. It really has to be done from the office of the president. And you have to get them both in a room. And there are things you can say to each one of them, which I won't reveal now, which will guarantee that this war will end immediately.
And that to get it solved, I can do it in 24 hours. I know both players, and I can do that in 24 hours. But you can only do it from the office of the president. You need that. You need that seat. You need what's tailed in that seat. And I would have that done in 24 hours. It wouldn't even be tough. I know what to say to each of them, and there's no way they would reject it.
I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I would have a deal done in 24 hours from the time we started. And I would tell Zelensky something, and I would tell Putin something, and I'd get him into a room, and I'd tell him again and again. I would have a deal done very quickly.
So, let's be very clear about this. Two things. Number one, spoiler alert, the war is not over. The war between Russia and Ukraine is not over. Russia's war of aggression still persists, and Trump has been in office for 26 hours. Number two, it is a fact, it's not a matter of opinion, that this was not a fringe promise. Trump repeatedly, explicitly, and consistently promised that he could end the war in 24 hours. Sometimes he would even say, it wouldn't even take that long. And he kept saying that it would not be hard. It would be really, really, really easy. And yet he hasn't done it. So Marco Rubio, Donald Trump's Secretary of State, former Florida senator, was confronted on this. But before I play that clip, let's read an article from NBC News. Trump's promise to end the Ukraine war in a day meets harsh realities. Trump's team has yet to present a blueprint for how to end the war. His chosen envoy to Ukraine says the new administration's goal is a peace deal within 100 days. It's about 99 more days than was initially promised, persistently, repeatedly, by Trump. On the campaign trail, Trump vowed to quickly end the war in Ukraine. He'd do it in 24 hours after taking the oath, he said, or even before his inauguration. Nearly 3 years after Russia launched a full-scale invasion into Ukraine, there's no end in sight to the war, Europe's worst since World War II. Fighting rages across a long front line, with Russian forces waging a grinding offensive in Ukraine's east and Ukrainian troops holding on to territory inside Russia in the Kursk region, where North Korean soldiers have arrived to bolster Moscow's ranks. Russia has suffered large casualties, with an estimated 700,000 dead or wounded, according to U.S. and British officials. Since Trump's election victory, his team has not outlined a peace proposal to Ukraine's leadership, according to two sources close to Ukraine's government and a former U.S. diplomat. And there has been no shuttle diplomacy between Kiev, Moscow, and Mar-a-Lago. Members of Trump's chosen national security team have in recent weeks acknowledged the difficulties of brokering a possible peace accord. Quote, let's set it at 100 days and move all the way back and figure out a way we can do this in the near term to make sure that a solution is solid, it's sustainable, and this war ends so that we can stop the carnage. Retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, Trump's pick to serve as special envoy to Ukraine, told Fox News last month. Marco Rubio, again, we're going to play a clip of him in just a second, but Trump's choice for Secretary of State told senators at his confirmation hearing on Wednesday that forging a peace between Ukraine and Russia will be, quote, very difficult. Quote, "This will not be easy," Rubio said. "Conflicts of this nature that have historical underpinnings to it are going to require a lot of hard diplomacy and tough work, but that's something that needs to happen." And so it goes on, because this article is a couple of days old. It was before Trump himself was inaugurated. But again, 26 hours after he's been inaugurated, no deal, no outline for a deal, and the war wages on. Now, we're going to play this clip from Marco Rubio, who has been confirmed, I think, on a vote 99-0 to be Donald Trump's Secretary of State. And I'll say this. I don't like Marco Rubio. I think he is a coward. I think he's betrayed his principles time and time again with respect to Donald Trump. He was a fervent, vocal critic of Donald Trump, saying that he was morally and intellectually unfit to be president. And then, of course, he bent the knee. So he's a coward and a loser, but he's not stupid. Marco Rubio is qualified to be Secretary of State, so I understand the 99-0 vote, although I probably would have encouraged Democrats to not vote for him because he would have been confirmed anyway. Republicans have a 53 to 47 seat majority in the Senate, so Democrats voting for Rubio, I don't think nets them anything. Bipartisanship and cooperation mean very little in today's political climate, even though sometimes voters assure you that that's the case. Their voting habits don't reflect it. But again, qualified guy. So he's put on the spot in an interview earlier today, be like, "Hey, what happened to your boss's hour to end this thing? He just snap his fingers and end this shit in 24 hours. It's been 24 hours and still going on. What do you say about that, little Marco?"
Secretary Rubio, one of the many things that President Trump said during his campaign run was that he would end the war in Ukraine on day one. That did not happen. How do you reconcile with the fact that he made a lot of promises and now it might be up to you and the team to keep these promises?
Yeah, like I think the promise the president made, really, if you look at it, is it's going to be the priority. It's going to be the official policy of the United States that the war in Ukraine needs to come to an end. It is a stalemate. It's a war and it's a conflict that was started by Russia. But it is now a stalemate, a protracted and bloody conflict. It's been incredibly destructive. I would argue for both Russia and Ukraine, but Ukraine is paying the biggest price of all. To its energy infrastructure, to the people and lives that have lost, to the millions of Ukrainians that have had to leave their countries and are living overseas. The conflict needs to end. And it's the policy of the United States that we want it to end. We want to do everything we can to help it end. We're going to...
Secretary.
That's really inspiring to hear, Mr. Secretary. That is inspiring to hear that you want to end the war. But again, your guy repeatedly, vocally, explicitly, consistently promised that it was effortless. That he's so smart, he's so powerful, he's so persuasive, he could snap his fingers and end this shit in 24 hours, and he failed. And you can see on Marco Rubio's face, just like, oh my God, that blinking where he's like, I don't want to have to answer this question. And I wouldn't want to have to answer this question either if I worked for a dumbass who made a promise that you obviously couldn't keep. Now, is it possible that Trump will negotiate an end to this war? I suppose so. He's certainly buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin. Putin wants to please Trump. Trump wants to please Putin. They see some sort of either transaction. I think with Trump, it's not quite so transactional. I think he genuinely admires Putin. I think he envies Putin. He wants the sort of authority and fear in America that Putin has over Russia. I think Putin looks at Trump as a useful idiot. That's according to Trump's own former national security advisor. I almost said Michael Bolton. Bolton. Then I almost said Roose Bolton. So funny. But John Bolton, Donald Trump's own former national security advisor, says that in his estimation, in his experience working for Trump and prepping Trump for negotiations with Russia over the years, that he thinks that Putin thinks that Trump is a useful idiot. So there's a mutual political benefit here. So is it possible that Trump will say to Ukraine, hey, listen, we're going to basically cut off aid unless you just you lay down your arms and allow Russia to keep the territory they've conquered? That would be a quick way to end the war, and that was an option always available to the Biden administration, but the Biden administration, right or wrong, wanted to help Ukraine resist Russia's aggression. And so, again, this idea that there was some sort of innovative way for Trump to end the war without just forcing Ukraine to accept their territorial loss seems kind of ridiculous. But even then, you still didn't get it done in 24 hours. Perhaps it's because foreign affairs and foreign negotiations are actually a hell of a lot harder than you idiots pretended that it was. Donald Trump in particular. This is the thing. I'm a political commentator. I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and I don't pretend that there are easy solutions to politics. My general heuristic is, for the most part, that people in politics, professional politics, are good at professional politics. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in it. Even Donald Trump, he's good at some level of politics. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been president twice. Okay. So when there are complex issues going on, this idea that they're just easy solutions to every problem, it's bullshit. And if you hear a political commentator or even a politician say, oh, there's an easy solution to this problem, super simple, super straightforward, not complicated at all, there should be a little red flag going up. You should be like, why is that? So if a political commentator says, all Democrats have to do is 1, 2, and 3, super simple, they'd win every election. Or all Republicans have to do is 1, 2, 3, super simple, they'd win every election. You should be suspicious. And especially in something as complicated as foreign affairs, geopolitics, global politics, and war of this magnitude and size and this history, anybody telling you that there are simple solutions are probably full of shit, which is precisely what Donald Trump is. So there you have it, folks. 1 day in office, and he already broke one of his biggest campaign promises, and we should hold him accountable for that. We should remind people of that, because facts don't speak for themselves. Democrats, elected Democrats, if you're watching this, facts don't speak for themselves. You need to publicly, loudly, persistently say Donald Trump broke his word, broke his promise. We have to start calling this stuff out. And I know what some MAGA Republicans will say, many MAGA Republicans. They'll say, oh, you're not supposed to take Trump literally. Oh, that you're being unreasonable. No. Donald Trump made a repeated commitment. He was asked by multiple outlets multiple times about ending the war in Ukraine, and he chose to say 24 hours or less and that it would be super simple. So we should judge him by that standard, and he failed. That is a failure to hold against him, major failure 24 hours in. What a disastrous presidency so far. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.